Teachers have read it. What was the most obvious? Your parents clearly did the assignment. When the student came in crying while holding the project and when asked what happened she announced that she was frustrated that her mom did the whole project, it looked nothing like how she wanted it to, and wasn't allowed to really do anything on it. This wasn't the first assignment that came in from this student that was clearly done by the mum, but the student finally had had enough of having her education taken from her. Penmanship? No kidding, kid had the maid write it. 6th grade research project that ended in a 3-page paper. One kid turned in a 10-page paper. And it definitely wasn't a bad attempt at plagiarism. It kind of felt like the mom was missing her own academic years. Middle school science project. Kid came in with a crude internal combustion engine, having previously failed science 3 quarters in a row. Not a teacher, but in middle school I procrastinated as most kids do and forgot about project to make a brochure about a country. My parents stayed up all night helping me, doing the majority of it. Years later underclassmen would tell me that same teacher would pull my project out every year and tell them what hard work looks like. His dad accidentally wrote his own name on the paper. I tortured the kid for a week by calling him by his dad's name. Ah, good times. This discovery was a collaboration between me and another teacher. The student in question submitted an assignment that showed no cohesion or ability to connect ideas, told me about how to make detergent from kiwi fruit in 500 words. The task was a 1500-word assignment on a DNA extraction experiment, and then the same week submitted a standard assignment to their psychology teacher with excellent flow, arguments and great conceptual synthesis. As a student, I remember in woodworking that we have to make a foldable chair that we have to work on the whole SEM. In the end mine was a fucking safety hazard, aka it can be sit upon but there's like nails ready to skewer your ass. Scared to submit that I literally bought new materials outside class and let my dad do it. Teacher was shocked on how good it was and questioned my authenticity. In the end I confessed that it was my dad, but my teacher's ego was so high, probably thinking he can humiliate me in front of class, so he told me to bring the original chair. He sat on it and punctured his ass and fell because the chair did not support HOS weight. I got suspended not because I hurt him but because I was cheating LMAO. 12-year-old kid brings in a beautiful galleon. All the other kids' galleons look like they are cut out of styrofoam using a butter knife, or some kind of strange 50-50 amalgamation of cardboard and hot glue. And then there's this kid with a wooden galleon, complete with rigging, cloth sails, a stand. After talking to him I finally get him to admit that his parents had gone to a shop and ordered a custom-made ship. What the heck? I had a student hand in an assignment on Google Docs. Most was written by his dad. How did I know? His dad was logged in while writing it, so it showed up on the edit history. The worst part is the dad is one of the assistant principal's tears of joy. Obligatory. Not a teacher, but in grade 3 we had to build the classic volcano that erupts bicarb soda lava. I did the entire thing myself, refusing help from my parents. I walked into class so proud of what I'd made and then saw everyone else's clearly made by their parents. One kid's even had fake smoke coming out of his, like bro, we're 7 years old, it's okay. Their grammar was magically perfect and they grew in intellect overnight. English as a foreign language teacher here. During lockdown last year a student sent in a test that had much better work than he usually did. When I googled his words, sure enough, he had copied it by mashing the first part of sentences from one source to the second part of sentences from another source. It did at least make sense, but it was still not his work. When I confronted him about cheating he said, I don't think I cheated, cause my mom helped me with it and she wouldn't cheat. Not a teacher, but I remember my classmate got caught faking his science fair project. In all his pictures, only the hands could be seen throughout the experiment. What gave it away was that the hands were white with a tattoo on the left hand, while the kid in question was African American. It was hilarious watching him defend himself. Not a teacher, but in 9th grade we were assigned a 10-page essay about life during the Vietnam War. I went to a prep school and was taking way too many honors classes, extracurriculars, etc. I broke down 3 days before the essay was due and asked my mom to help me. She wrote the most beautiful essay I've ever read. She used lyrics from Bye, Miss American Pie, and wove them into her real-life experiences. My teacher was moved to tears when she read it. I honestly have no idea how she thought it was the work of a 9th grader, but I was super grateful for the A+. According to my cousin, the same teacher is still using the paper as her best example of student work, almost 12 years later. The circles were perfect circles. I work with first-grade special education kids. Student couldn't explain one thing from his homework. Classmate of mine read out her home WRK to the class. Structural analysis of a small town in our area. She kept talking about the Jufra structure. Turns out her mom had written the entire thing in cursive and the girl was unaware of the word infrastructure. Not a teacher, but a girl in my brother's class won an award for her DARE essay. But when she had to read the essay for the class, she had to keep stopping to ask the teacher how to pronounce different words. On the essay that she wrote, "I'm honestly surprised they didn't revoke the award." And #X200B. Okay, I get that there could be valid reasons for this to happen now. As I said, I'm not a teacher, I just made an observation. Not related to the question, but here's something my dumbass did in first grade. I got detention in first grade for playing in the hallway when my teacher left the classroom to print out something. Well, my dumbass thought that I can just write my mom's name in the signature part to sign the detention slip. Well, instead of writing my mom's name I wrote, "Mom," in the "your signature here" part with scrawny little letters. Walked up to my teacher all cool and laid back like a first grader would, and she burst out hysterically laughing. May I add that she didn't accept the detention slip, unfortunately. Not a teacher, but I remember one. An assignment in a language class involved audio recordings, not like a video, but something pre-recorded at home to present to the class. One student obviously had her mother speak the entire thing. In one bit you could actually hear her voice in the background while her mom was talking into the mic. Not a teacher, but when I was at school we had a class called home tech, cooking, sewing, etc. F knows why, but anyway, we had to make a peg bag from strips of material and put it together using a sewing machine. I wasn't doing that, so I asked my mum to do it for me with my material. She did, and she was chuffed at her final product. So I took it back to school. My teacher gave me a D for my mum's peg bag and she's still fuming over it. Too long did not read. Mum did my sewing assignment and teacher said it was crap. An essay the kid wrote about his dad being his hero. Went on to list all of the father's achievements, the stuff he did for his kid, and ending with, "My dad is super smart." The email from the parent. I worked very hard on this essay and I think you'll agree that if XXX had attempted it, it would have been of a much lower standard. Please score on the quality of the response, not the authorship. No. As an 8-year-old I once built a Buzz the Wire game for a science competition at school. I got disqualified because I clearly didn't build it myself. Still get angry thinking about it. Okay, I'm not a teacher, but in 4th grade one had this build a model mission project, and so many kids came in with perfect models, and it was a dead giveaway that their parents did the work. My mom made a point of making me do my own, and it looked like garbage compared to my classmates because I actually did it myself. I'm an ESL teacher. The homework was to draw the items that were written, to check understanding, and the class was full of 5-year-olds. One kid's work was completed with some perfectly drawn pictures, in the style of the textbook they used. I straight up asked the kid in their native language if they drew it. They said no and proceeded to do some shockingly bad tracing of the alphabet in class. The assignment was to draw your family tree. It's grade 4, so, as far back as you can go just to understand the concept might be 3 or 4 generations. Now the student had a very unique name. It was over 10 letters long and he, as yet, had not mastered writing it down. This was due to being removed from school for weeks on end to vacation. He was also removed sick for any and all testing. I had absolutely no support from the principal to get this kid an education. The parents were rich and influential. Lol 5. The project was handed in and student really wowed us. The tree was so lifelike, he had been able to trace back 9 generations. This kid can't write his own name but he can do calligraphy. He can also sign his mother's name to the bottom of the print. My parents never did my work but I was always accused of it. I remember one time I typed an essay right in front of a teacher during a torturing period, so it was only me and like 3 other kids and a teacher. She watched me type the essay, she looked at it and okayed it. Then when I printed it out and turned it in she gave me an F stating that my parents did it. I'm still salty about it many years later. A school chum mine once wrote a perfect, amazing, compelling story for a French creative writing class. Only problem was they couldn't read it. Her mother had been forcing their au pair to do all of the friend's homework in the email to her. The mother never realized the friend knew zero French because she wasn't actually learning it. We were in boarding school. The French au pair took care of friend's little brother back home. She had never met friend and assumed friend could read it. Friend's report is infamous for how awful it was to have heard. I felt both terrible for her and impressed that no one had caught her before this report. As a parent, I'm not looking forward to homework. Not assignment but first runner-up of a color painting competition. First runner-up is only 3 years old. Not a teacher, but when I was in 3rd grade we had a mandatory science fair, and of course I didn't tell my parents about it until the weekend before it was due. Basically my parents came up with the idea, and kind of, walked me through the process of a science fair project. What really happened is that they just told me what to do and I did it. I ended up making it past the first judgment cycle and then lost. But the entire project was decked out. Number 1, everything was handwritten. I have horrible handwriting, obviously my parents wrote everything. The wording was also pretty good. Overall I basically got a free grade thanks to my parents. Not a teacher. I was the student. Senior English. I rolled into school with a 18 inches tall, full steel, fully functional guillotine, board to fit your standard number 2 pencil to use it on for the demonstration. Cut many clean in half. I almost got suspended for bringing a weapon to school, after someone got their finger in under the blade, and it made its way to the bone from about 2 inches. Had they had the blade all the way up when it slipped, it'd have taken their finger off. My dad was a machinist. A friend had a trebuchet, on a semi-trailer. His dad parked it out front. We launched gallons of milk round about 500 yards with it. Hit a house over the football field, across the street, in a neighborhood. That was a fun day. Not a teacher, but there was a guy in my A-level ICT class in school who was the teacher's son. Our coursework was to create an access database for a school library system and document all the functionality of it and how it was created. He got full marks on it and was even audited by the board and got away with it. He admitted to everyone in the class he didn't lift a finger to do it. He went on to do law at university and is now a barrister. I guess if I'm ever up in court I can throw that in his face. Not a teacher, but there was a kid who turned in a life-size cannon for our history fair and shot it in 7th grade. The next year he turned in a hovercraft he could ride on for the science fair. I'm almost 30, so this was more than 15 years ago. The kids were allowed to bring an index card with their notes on it to the midterm exam. One boy brought in a card with the neatest, tiniest handwriting ever. Clearly not his work. He got an 11% on the exam. The information on the index card was all correct, it was just that the kid didn't do 1 ounce of studying, so he had no idea how to apply the information to the exam. His mother contacted the school super angry, asking how he could possibly fail the exam. You could tell she was on the verge of saying, "How could he fail when I made him that entire index card?" During quarantine, we have had to institute a no parents on the room with you who like you do schoolwork. The reason being a 16-year-old girl and her mother would lie in bed together all class and the mother could be heard telling her daughter exactly what every answer was. I had the girl in previous years, and her homework was always leagues better than what she ever did in class. That explained a whole lot. Not a teacher. I was marveling at these crazy parents, when I remembered my mom did actually do a craft project for me once. I suspect she just didn't want me near her sewing machine though. I don't have one of these, but I have the opposite. One time I had a project where I had to make a miniature, wattle and daub, wall in primary school. I knew how it was meant to work, and how to do it, for the life of me I couldn't get it to work. So my stepdad tried to help me. We spent hours trying to get it to work, and failed miserably, but in the end I had something to take to class. Teacher said I obviously hadn't spent any time trying to do it and failed me for the assignment. Pretty easy to tell in art class. One day the student can't draw a square properly and the next day he comes in with a perfectly rendered 3-dimensional still life with depth and shading. Separate incident, and even more egregious, a girl didn't even hand in a year-end project herself. She spent many classes refusing to do any work in class. Then after the project is due, someone else I've never seen comes by with an amazing drawing and said that the student drew this and wants to submit it. How stupid do you think I am? Not an assignment, but a shockingly articulate email from a student explaining why they had actually not done the wrong thing in class as I had accused them of caught them doing. Gotta watch those sneaky kids and their dumb parents who think they're fooling us. What? Parents do their kids' assignments? That's a thing. This is a story my little brother told me. So his German class had to write an assignment and there was a girl who just wrote it in English and then ran the whole thing through Google Translate with German. But when she turned it in, she saw it wasn't German she picked in Google Translate but Dutch. When she realized, it was already too late. The teacher wasn't mad, just disappointed when she said, "If you absolutely have to cheat, can't you at least do it right?" 10% on the first term in class exam, 15% on the second term mostly in class lab report. 90%, without a draft or writing a single coherent word at school, on the third term research investigation. I don't know what Mum's plan is for senior year when we have to verify authenticity with checkpoints and things, but she wrote a great report. My dad was a carpenter. Looking back, I submitted replica models my dad built for me specifically for the assignments of monuments like the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the Greek Parthenon, Egyptian pyramids. Other students used toilet paper rolls and recycled material. The primary teachers accepted it as my work, gave me an A+ and no questions asked. Looking back, this was kinda fucked up. I don't know why they accepted this as it was clearly cheating. Seeing as nobody else is a teacher. Around 7th to 8th grade we had to draw up blueprints for a house. It was contest. The girl who won had literally just drawn their own fucking house. The rest of the class was pretty pissed. When I was a Cub Scout leader, we had our annual Pinewood Derby races. The boys were supposed to create the car themselves no matter how badly they turned out. One kid was definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed, but was always giving his best in everything. He showed up with the most intricately detailed, perfectly painted, perfectly weighted car I've ever seen. Dad was a mechanical engineer and we all knew immediately. Kid swore up and down he built it with no help but kept looking at Dad for assurance. He placed second overall and Dad threatened to hire a lawyer, and said, and I quote, he spent weeks building it, dude, just man up and admit what we all knew. Perfect cursive writing, from a 5-year-old. Teaching 7-year-olds, they were meant to do their spelling homework every weekend and hand it in Monday morning. One Monday, a dad brings his daughter in. They forgot to take the homework home last week, so he drops her off and says, "If you can give it to me now, I'll take it home and do it." I have him the homework sheet, and he hands it in when he comes to pick her up. The worst thing is, he didn't even do all the exercises.